Hello, my name is Brett, and welcome to EBT 8130 Web Conference number 1, a brief history of e-learning and community of inquiry overview. My name is Brett, and I'll be your instructor for this web conference. Today is Saturday, January 14th. Please remember to lower your electronic hand as soon as you enter the room. And for now, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all the virtual students who are watching the recorded version of this web conference. If you're watching the recorded version, please make sure you write a robust missed class summary and email it to my Wright State address that's it's on the screen on this first slide. When I first started doing this, I wondered, how do I lower my electronic hand? Well, if you look at the slide, you simply take your mouse and you look at the center picture here where it says, you have a hand raised with a number 1 around it. You just click on that, and that lowers your electronic hand. So before we begin, please remove all distractions. Put your phone on mute, close the door of the room you're in, and politely ask not to be disturbed. But before we begin, take a moment to relax, close your eyes, open your mind, take a deep breath, and prepare to learn. Before we begin the class, let's do a little quality check here. And the quality check ensures that I have properly set up the Blackboard collaborative system. So the first thing I need you to do is give me a green check, thumbs up, or a green check up if you can see the red record button in the upper right-hand corner. Select no if you cannot. Next, I need you to give me a green check if you can see the words quality check and the slide on the screen. Select no if you cannot. And finally, give me a green check if you can hear my voice adequately. Select no if you cannot. The learning objectives for this workshop are the following. Define e-learning and describe the difference between asynchronous and synchronous communication. Describe the 3 main takeaways about the origin of e-learning. Name the educational philosopher who proposed community of inquiry and its 3 modern interdependent elements, and apply the community of inquiry principles to improve the Defense Civilian Intelligence Personnel System performance feedback process. So to begin, let's break the ice. In the missed class summary, describe your worst e-learning experience and why. Provide 3 suggestions for improvement that would have improved this learning experience. So today I'm going to talk about 2 things. I'm going to talk about the history of e-learning and the community of inquiry framework, and I'm just going to give a brief overview. First, I want to cover the history of e-learning. But before I begin, I should define e-learning. E-learning is generally defined as the use of synchronous, and that is in a live session with other learners, and asynchronous, which is in a non-live session where you learn on your own. Communication for the purpose of learning and thinking collaboratively. So for our first quick assessment, email me the difference between the synchronous and asynchronous learning to the email address on the screen. The next thing I want to talk about with e-learning is the big idea, or what are the 3 main takeaways regarding the origin of e-learning? Well, the first takeaway is that e-learning is a form of distance education. It's a form of. The second thing is that e-learning came to fruition in the mid-1990s with advancements in the World Wide Web. And the third takeaway is that e-learning traces its roots to computer conferencing back in the 1990s. So let's do a quick assessment. Text true or false to my phone number 937-831-1228 to the following questions. The next thing I want to talk about are the two main applications of e-learning, and those are online learning, which is rooted in traditional distance education, with the difference being its collaborative nature. However, it's not the same as traditional distance education, where you would receive a bunch of books and you would, on your own, do the course of study and program. And the second thing is that blended learning combines both online learning with traditional classroom experience. So those are the two main applications of e-learning, online and blended learning. Now what I'd like you to do is reflect on the two main applications of e-learning. Write a short reflection in the Ms. Class summary. So the next thing I want to do is show you a short video, and we're going to move on to our next topic, which is community of inquiry. Now that we've talked about a little bit, briefly talked about the history of e-learning, let's talk about the community of inquiry. And I want to start with showing you a short video, and I'm going to do that through WebTour. So let me put this up here on the screen, and I will paste the URL in, and let's hope this works. I'll be back in about 2 minutes and 20 seconds to continue the class.
Communities of inquiry began in the pre-digital era as a learning concept that tried to understand the impact of social interaction on learning. Its originators felt that too much emphasis had traditionally been placed on the empirical Cartesian model of knowledge, and not enough on the social aspects of knowledge formation. In the digital era, Communities of Inquiry was reformulated to incorporate online learning environments. Canadian researchers at the University of Alberta identified 3 key components that each contribute to meaningful online learning experiences. The first component, cognitive presence, measures the student's ability to construct both knowledge and understanding on an individual and a collective level. Emphasis is placed on sustained communication to aid the development of a better understanding of the concepts being taught. Interestingly, and perhaps counterintuitively in this era of student-centered learning, the Community of Inquiry framework gives equal emphasis to the role of the teacher. Teaching presence refers to the teacher's ability to set the curriculum, properly organize courses, and actively participate in constructing meaning-making for their students. According to this model, teachers are essential regulators of the student learning process. The natural barriers to interpersonal communication constructed by technology are often considered insurmountable, but this is not necessarily the case. Online social presence can be very real and very meaningful. Social presence allows for online participants to establish themselves as real people with personalities in this digital environment. This can be achieved via text, video, or audio communication. According to Community of Inquiry researchers, social presence is essential as it forms the basis of students feeling comfortable enough within a social context to openly discuss course-related topics. In this regard, strong, competent teaching presence is required because it is the role of the teacher to set the class climate, which allows for students to feel safe in expressing themselves within the learning environment. Additionally, it is teachers who model the initial behavior in a digital setting. In other words, teachers also bring with them their own social presence, and research has demonstrated that in an online environment, teacher social presence can actually be more meaningful and important to students than peer social presence. It is only when all 3 of these presences are actively engaged that students receive the optimal online learning experience.
So how did everyone like the video? Maybe give me some quick feedback in your Ms. Class summary and let me know what you thought about that. So what actually is a community of inquiry? Community of inquiry. And a brief definition is a community of inquiry is a community of learners who use a collaborative approach and assume a role of both teacher and learner. So let's emphasize that a little bit here. They assume and act as, and that is not going to work for me. There we go. Teacher and learner. Whoops. Well, that's not working for me either. Let's try this one more time. Let's do it with a rectangle. Learners who act as teacher and learner, and they engage in discourse to validate understanding, facilitate inquiry, and make meaning with the goal of facilitating future learning. Now let's assess. What is the purpose of acting as both teacher and learner in a community of inquiry? Reply in the text chat or text me the answer to 937-831-1228. And since this is a asynchronous class, you cannot reply in the text chat, so go ahead and put that answer on your missed class summary. So where did the community of inquiry come from? Well, its foundations trace back to its origin of the educational philosopher John Dewey. And it is a collaborative approach which to learning is not new. In 1938, educational philosopher John Dewey contended that meaning is made through active sharing of thoughts and ideas, with communication as a defining component of an educational experience. So for my next question and our next assessment, what does Dewey consider the defining component of an educational experience? Send your reply to my email address. Finally, the current community of inquiry, Sewell Framework, first proposed in an article by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer in 2000, involves a process of delivering meaningful learning experiences through the social, cognitive, and teaching presences. They create a sense of belonging through communication, shared teaching and writing, and shared teaching and learning. We will discuss these three presences in depth in the next web conference section on Saturday, January 21st. So now what I want you to do is consider the three independent elements or interdependent elements of the current community of inquiry construct. Write a self-reflection in your missed class summary on your interpreted meaning. Okay, how can we connect this to our workplace? And how can we use the community of inquiry to benefit Air Force defense civilian employees, which is what we are where we work? The Defense Civilian Intelligence Personnel System, or DCIPS, uses a performance feedback application for employees to self-assess their performance twice a year. So it's a self-assessment that you have to sit down and do twice a year of how you did or what you've done throughout the year for the first 6 months and the second 6 months. The interface is neither intuitive or user-friendly, causing most employees to miss feedback compliance deadlines. It's just not easy to use. Having access to a community of inquiry for information sharing could benefit Air Force employees, or Air Force DCIPS employees specifically, from how to assess their own performance writing to simply just how to use the application itself. So now what I'd like you to do is brainstorm ways an interactive community of inquiry could be beneficial to accomplishing DCIPS performance assessments. So in summary, I covered a brief history of e-learning, and a very brief history of e-learning at that, the origin and modern interpretation of the community of inquiry framework, and how having access to a community of inquiry may be beneficial to Air Force civilian DCIPS employees who have little access to guidance for completing their semi and annual performance appraisal self-assessments. Now, here's a final evaluation. Please answer these three questions. E-learning is defined as, well, here we go. E-learning is defined as, and that's a narrative answer that I need you to put in your missed class summary. Please describe the three main takeaways about the origin of e-learning. Name three interdependent presences of the current community of inquiry framework. And finally, list one suggestion to improve the Defense Civilian Intelligence Personnel System performance feedback process using the community of inquiry framework. That's all we have for now. I'll see you next Saturday. Thank you for watching.